Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I will be doing my book review on Stephen King's Needful Things. So Needful Things was actually the winner for my Patreon wheel spin that I do every month, and this was the winner for September. I'm doing this review a little later than I wanted to, but actually Andrew from Andrew's Widgetly Reads, he was the winner, and this is the book that he wanted me to read, which was very serendipitous because he actually read it also in September, and I think he's claiming that this is his favorite Stephen King book that he's ever read, or at least one of, maybe in his top 5 or somewhere. And I agree with him. It is definitely one of his best. I don't know if I would put it top 5, or it's not my all-time favorite, but I'm leaning towards putting it in my top 10. It's so good. And like with all of these Stephen King book reviews I've been doing over the last year or so, it is a reread for me. So I did read it, and this was actually one of the first Stephen King books that I ever read. Like, it was like one of the first 10 or so. I read it back in college, probably in like 2013 or 2014, thereabouts. And I really enjoyed it then, and it's been a while since I've read it, and I really enjoyed my reread of it. All right, so enough of the preamble. Let's go ahead and jump right into the review. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know anything about Needful Things, Needful Things was published, I think, in 1991, and at the time it was, published as The Last Castle Rock Story, which at the time was true, but ever since then you've had stuff like Wendy's Button Box, which has become more Castle Rock stuff. But at the time, this was The Last Castle Rock Story, and for those of you who don't know, Castle Rock is a fictional town that Stephen King, a lot of his stories take place in, like The Dead Zone, which is my all-time favorite, and then you've got stuff like, what else, Cujo, I think The Dark Half, and then there's a few short stories and novellas also that take place in Castle Rock. But in 1991, he published this, and it was published as The Last Castle Rock Story. And as far as the premise goes and the plot, it's very fun. You've essentially got this guy named Leland Gaunt who moves into Castle Rock, and he opens up a store called Needful Things. What he sells, he doesn't necessarily take money in exchange. One of the first chapters in here is a boy who goes in and he really wants this baseball card, and Leland Gaunt wants to sell him to it for like a very cheap price, but also he wants him to do a favor for him. He wants him to like play a prank on someone. And essentially what you get with Needful Things is just this slow buildup of tension and chaos and just madness that happens because every time someone goes into the store, Leland Gaunt has something that they really want. And Leland Gaunt every time wants someone to do something to someone else in the town of Castle Rock. So at the start, you've got this boy who does something. It snowballs into just more chaos, and just everyone is just fighting each other, and everything's just happening all at once until you get to the end of the story where it's just complete and utter chaos. And that's my favorite part about this book, is just you start out and it's just, a nice simple town of Castle Rock, and then you get to the end and it's just madness. And just watching how Stephen King sets up everything and how Leland Gaunt gets everyone to play all these little pranks and to like leave letters for people and to like leave messages or to just do really dastardly things. Everything in this book just works perfectly, and it's just a slow spiral into chaos, and I absolutely love it for that. And another reason why I love this book is Leland Gaunt. He's probably a top 5 Stephen King villain, might be the most underrated, because obviously you've got classic Stephen King villains like Jack Torrance, Annie Wilkes, Pennywise, and even, like the Man in Black from The Dark Tower. But Leland Gaunt is really one of the best Stephen King villains for my money. Kat, will you just stop for 5 minutes? Really? Just stop getting into stuff. Can you hear that? The cat is tearing up the carpet. I also love this book because sometimes Stephen King, when he writes a book, he tries to have like an overlaying theme or message with this book. Not all the time, but definitely stuff, like Pet Sematary is just all about grief, right? And then you read The Shining and it's really hard not to pick up on the themes of addiction and alcoholism, right? With this book, I think it's all about greed and temptation because Leland Gaunt definitely tempts people with these items that people don't necessarily have to have, but they really want them. And that, that plays off the title Needful Things. Like they don't need them necessarily, but they have so much desire to have these things, and they're just so tempted by Leland Gaunt, like, oh, what can I do to possibly get this thing? And he just makes them do really nasty things to people, and it spirals out of control, and it just shows you like how, being tempted by stuff and just being very greedy, because there is also stuff like, like they get the item, but Leland Gaunt will like go back to them and say, oh, I want you to do more stuff for me. And like in order to keep their stuff, they have to keep going back and doing stuff for them. And I know I'm being very vague, but I really don't want to give away too much about like what happens in the story, like what Leland Gaunt makes these people do to each other, because that's the fun of it. It's just watching things spiral out of control. And of course, it is a Castle Rock story. It is a small town story. And of course, Stephen King does that brilliantly. Of course, people love it, the town of Derry, just getting to know everybody. He does that very brilliantly in here. And you just get to know all of these random ass people from Castle Rock and what they're up to, their thought processes about everything, how they feel about everybody in town. So definitely if you've read It by Stephen King and you love that kind of small town setting and like all of the random people that are in town, like you'll definitely get a kick out of this. I actually prefer Needful Things to It. It is, Needful Things is a chunky book, but it's definitely, for my money, it's better paced than a lot of his other chunky books. If you've seen my channel, you probably know that a lot of his longer books like It and The Stand, they're good, but they go on for way too long in my mind. This one's just a little over 700 pages with, fairly tiny font, but it is very fast paced. You can get through this book, or at least I did, very quickly. And it reads very, very quickly for a Stephen King chunky book. So, like I said, if you love that small town feeling and just getting to know all the characters, what they're up to, what they think about everybody, especially with this book because everybody's kind of blaming each other for what's happening to everybody, it's so much fun. This is just a really fun Stephen King book. And as far as complaints go, I really don't have that many major complaints. Like, this is a 5-star book for me. I can definitely see myself rereading this book many times in my life, and I'm super glad that I read it for a second time. And probably my main complaint is that the very ending is a little goofy, but at the same time, the rest of the book is just so amazing that by the time you get to the ending and just all of the chaos and madness that is happening, I can kind of forgive it just because it is what it is. But while the ending is goofy, I still think it fits in a weird way. I really enjoy it, but the ending is not perfect, but I still like it. And the rest of the book is just amazing. And like I said, definitely 5 stars. And like I said, the things that I like about this book is the slow buildup of tension and chaos. Leland Gaunt is one of my all-time favorite Stephen King villains. Very villainous, duh. And the characters in here are very well crafted, and the small town feeling is pretty good in this book, very good. And and like I said, I don't really have that many complaints about this book. This is another kind of gush review. I've done a few of them, like with Carrie, which is 5 stars, Doohickey, which is 5 stars. This is another 5-star Stephen King book. So thank you, Andrew, for picking this book, and I'm glad that you also liked it as well. See, we can agree on Stephen King occasionally, right? It's going to be a lot of fun when I go back and eventually do my re-ranking of all of his books, because last year, if you don't know, I ranked all of Stephen King's books in like a 10 episode series, and that was a lot of fun. I don't remember what I put Needful Things as, but I'm pretty sure I put it in my top 15. I might even bump it up to top 10 when I go back and redo it, because it's just really good. And so it'll be a lot of fun to redo that list, and that'll probably be out probably near the end of October or maybe the start of November. I'm not sure yet. I still gotta read. I'm rereading obviously a lot of Stephen King books for the Stephen King readathon, so it'll be fun to see which books get higher and which books get lower. So look forward to this one probably being in the top 10. But yeah, just know that this is a 5-star Stephen King book. I love it. It's definitely one of the best longer Stephen King books, that's for sure, because, you know, a lot of longer Stephen King books I have problems with, but really I don't really have any major complaints with this one. It's a 5-star read, and it's awesome, and you should go read it. All right, so that was my Stephen King book review for Needful Things, one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books, 5 stars. Have you guys read Needful Things? And what did you guys think of it? And if you haven't, are you interested in reading it? So please let me know all of those awesome comments down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the Book Astronomer Discord. And if you'd like to sign up for Patreon and participate in the wheel spin that I'm doing, I'm actually changing the Patreon wheel spin to include all books, not Stephen King books. So if there's a book that you really want me to read that's not Stephen King, you can sign up and you could potentially get me to read it in the coming months. So I'm changing that. So there's that. Also, I have my Amazon wish list if anyone would like to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a terrific day.